Let's move on to the day's business news. We're going to start with the US-China trade war. Now, it looks like a recent cooling of that conflict may have been just a temporary respite as Donald Trump really ramps up combative rhetoric at the UN General Assembly. And France 24's business editor, it's not Stephen Carroll, as I said earlier on. You can see it's Brian Quinn. Apologies.
No, not at all, Stuart. I'm happy to play Stephen for one day at least. Well, some of the toughest talk on trade ever from Trump at the UN General Assembly during his address, as an apparent bid for some reconciliation with China over recent weeks turned once again to accusations of abuse. Trump defended his tariff policy, emphasizing the need for major structural reforms at the heart of the Chinese economy before he considers ending their trade war. Despite recently granting exemptions to hundreds of Chinese products in his tariffs, Trump says he's unwilling to accept a bad deal for America. The president says Beijing has broken promises it made when joining the World Trade Organization in 2001. Here's Trump.
The United States lost 60,000 factories after China entered the WTO. The World Trade Organization needs drastic change. The second largest economy in the world should not be permitted to declare itself a developing country in order to game the system at others' expense.
Well, turning to the markets, Asian indexes followed Wall Street into the red on Wednesday, in part on that harsh trade rhetoric, but also over political uncertainty in the U.S. as House Democrats launch an impeachment investigation against Trump. The Nikkei in Tokyo closing down just over 1/3%. Chinese indexes in the red as well. The Hong Kong Hang Seng down over 1.25%. Shanghai down right at 1%. Kospi in Seoul down 1.3% at the close. Here in Europe, markets following that same trend. All major indexes off by right around 0.5%. London's down half, Paris down half, Frankfurt down 1/3% at the open. Well, next, the fallout from the collapse of giant UK tour operator Thomas Cook continues to reverberate around the EU and beyond. Hoteliers and airports from Greece to Turkey to Tunisia bracing for a major hit to their revenues amid waves of cancellations and failures to pay. UK regulators are now preparing to investigate Thomas Cook's collapse with a potential focus on high pay for company executives, even as its finances ran out. Selena Sykes has the latest.
Days after the collapse of Thomas Cook, the fallout continues. As thousands of employees and suppliers face uncertain futures, the knock-on effects of the demise of the world's oldest travel agency are being felt by tourism industries across the world, including in Spain, Greece, Tunisia and Turkey. Dalaman Airport in southwest Turkey is to lose 70,000 Thomas Cook passengers who were supposed to travel in October.
Thomas Cook normally brings 400,000 British tourists to the region. The fact that 70,000 passengers won't be coming here will cause economic problems. This will affect not only our airports, but it will also affect our tourism partners in the region.
As thousands of British holidaymakers continue to fly home in the biggest ever peacetime repatriation, the UK government has already announced an urgent inquiry into Thomas Cook's collapse by the Insolvency Service. The Financial Reporting Council is also considering an investigation into how the company was run and why warning signs about its financial health were ignored. Prime Minister Boris Johnson and leader of the opposition Jeremy Corbyn have also raised questions about how much Thomas Cook bosses were paid, even as finances ran dry.
Bosses were able to fill their pockets with unearned bonuses while their workers face redundancy, and 150,000 holidaymakers are stranded because of their failure.
Top directors at Thomas Cook have been paid nearly €23 million in salaries and bonuses since 2014.
And finally, for business, climate goals for private industry are a big thing these days. Amazon pledging to go carbon neutral by 2040 just this past week. But a new study of 3,000 publicly traded firms shows that less of 1/5 of them are on track to meet emissions targets set by the Paris Accords in 2050. Investment data firm Arabesque S-Ray found that over 1/3 of the world's top 200 companies don't even disclose their emissions. Some 90 firms committed to slashing their carbon footprint ahead of the UN General Assembly this week, but Climate experts point out that with global emissions rising, fossil fuel companies continuing to develop new oil fields, those commitments are unlikely to have much of an effect on rising temperatures and sea levels. So corporate action probably not the final solution for climate change, Stuart.
Oh, well, we should keep our fingers crossed that something else will be. Anyway, thank you very much, Brian Quinn with the papers. On France 24, not with the papers, with the business.